everyone to BookEnds Online Edition, produced by the Wadena County Historical Society and Travel and Story Seller in collaboration with the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center. BookEnds is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Five Wings Arts Council, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. BookEnds programs from previous authors are now available on the website of the Wadena County Historical Society at www.wadenacountyhistory.org. Today's program will also be available on the website shortly. This month's speaker is Traci Lambrecht, also known as PJ Tracy. She is the author of the psychological thriller Deep into the Dark. She was part of a mother-daughter writing duo under the pseudonym PJ Tracy. Together, they produced books that were national and international bestsellers. PJ Tracy is known for her fast, fresh, and funny characters and her sizzling plots. The Monkey Wrench series was her first, set in Minneapolis and co-written with her mother. Now, with Deep into the Dark, she's on her own. Next month's BookEnds will be held Saturday, October 9th, and will feature Jeff Herbach. But before next month, we will have a special program next week, Saturday, September 18th, featuring poet and essayist Ross Gay. If you have questions for today's author, feel free to enter them through chat. If you'd like to order books, you may do so through our bookseller, travelandstoryseller@gmail.com. Now, let's welcome BookEnds Online Edition, Traci Lambrecht. Thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Well, I guess Shelly took care of my intro. But I guess I'd like to start today because it is a day of solemn remembrance. And I just can't believe that 9/11 was 20 years ago. I mean, it just seems unfathomable. But, and I know every single person remembers that day and remembers where they were. And it's oddly, very oddly, Monkey Wrench, our first novel, is forever entwined with 9/11 because Monkey Wrench was slated to go to auction in New York on 9/11.
Wow. And
I was living in Los Angeles at the time. And I thought, well, I have to fly in to be with PJ for the auction, super exciting. So I scheduled a flight on 9/11 in the morning. And at the last minute, I thought, no, I have to get in the day before and then we'll be together. So I switched my flight and flew in the night before, and PJ and I stayed up late, obviously chattering and drinking wine. And we went to bed and, we're up late. So we were sleeping in and the phone kept ringing and we're ignoring it and we're tired. Finally, it just became so annoying that we ended up getting up at like 9 o'clock. And PJ turned on the TV as she was about to make coffee in the kitchen. And I was headed toward the office to pick up the messages and see who was annoying us when we tried to sleep in. And I heard her gasp and say, "Oh my God." And I turned around and, obviously ran back to the kitchen. And we just sat there and horrified and riveted, as everyone in the world was. And we just couldn't stop. I mean, we're just standing there and it was the most horrifying thing. And it was 9 in the morning. So about half an hour later, we watched the North Tower fall. And, I remembered thinking that how grateful and blessed I was to have been in Minnesota with PJ and with my family, because it was just the kind of, you had to be with those kind of people. I had a great life and a wonderful life and friends in LA, but there was just something about that moment that was just, I don't know, it's really indescribable. So anyhow, I always saw 9/11, and every time I look at a Monkey Wrench book or think about a Monkey Wrench book, I think about 9/11. And I guess that's a good thing because we know that I will never forget, and PJ won't either. Yeah, let me talk a little bit about PJ because I would be very remiss if I didn't. Be my collaborator pretty much for my entire life. PJ always said that she started to write when she could hold a crayon. And I was very much the same way. It was immediately, I was obsessed with writing as a little kid. My biggest, greatest form of entertainment was I would get home from school and I would have a snack. And then I would go outside in the yard and just walk around. We lived in the country on a horse front. And I would walk around and I would make up stories and I would say the stories out loud, line by line. And I was obsessive. Every line had to be perfect. So I would say them over and over and over again and rewrite until it was perfect and then move on. And I always thought, gosh, if the neighbors saw this little 5-6-year-old kid out there talking to herself for hours, like she was insane. But that was my entertainment. I love to do it. And obviously we come from a huge, reader family. I'm very literate, and it was my favorite time in the world was bedtime, because PJ would always read me a story. But we were both voracious readers, and we ran out of books. It was a long time ago, and the library was far away, and we just kept burning through the books. And so finally she said, well, we don't have a new book today. So how about if we write our own story and then act it out? And I thought, oh, great, how fun is that, right? So we did that, and they were very obviously simplistic at the time, but we would, write the stories and then we would act them out. And PJ was hysterical. I mean, there was always high drama, so funny. And we would act them out with my stuffed animals, Lammy and Teddy, who I still have today in a place of honor up in my bedroom. And Lammy used to be this beautiful, fluffy white lamb with a pink ribbon. And Teddy was this nice, soft, fuzzy, brown teddy bear. And now they're gray, holy, eyeless, and threadbare. And they have no stuffing left. So basically I have these like two ugly, gray, holy rags. And that's what's left of Lammy and Teddy. But I like to keep them there because it reminds me of how PJ and I began. And so essentially our collaboration began at that early age. And, and obviously it never stopped. We were partners in everything, from the time I was a baby. And she, at the time, was writing lots of short stories when I was in high school. And romantic short stories and mysteries, because back then, in the 80s, there was actually quite a market for short stories. Sadly, no longer, but there was a great market then, and they paid well. And then she moved on to writing Harlequin romances. And finally, she became so busy, and I was just out of college at that point. And she said, Tracy, you've always written, you've actually published your own short story and poetry. I'm super busy. Let's help me write some stories and catch up. And so we did. And that's kind of how the actual, professional collaboration came about, and got it published. And I got a little paycheck, which was super exciting for me as being a broke, post-college student. So I took the money and then ran off to Europe, and then came back and wrote another short story. And then she took it a step further and said, well, how would you like to write a Harlequin romance with me? I'm thinking, how do you write a romance novel with your mother? But we did. And I am so sorry. I have a screaming cat. Can we pause for a moment while I let her in?
Yeah.
She's driving me insane. I'll be right back.
That's a great question. How do you write a Harlequin romance with your mother? Can you imagine doing? I can't imagine doing that with mine.
Well, here I am to answer that question for you. Thank you for letting my cat in. Speaking of cats, she showed up too. Of course, we knew she would. So I thought, well, yeah, why not? But oh my gosh, how is this going to work? And basically, I mean, our whole writing lives together, we spent a lot of time laughing and giggling. And that's exactly how I got through the Harlequins. I mean, you're sitting there, they weren't the hardcore. I mean, they were very, light, nice romances. They weren't crazy, but we'd sit there and like be, writing a tender love scene together and, going back and forth, and we'd each were writing. And then suddenly we just dissolve into fits of giggles because it sounded so silly when you're saying this stuff to your mother or to your daughter, right? So that was, it was actually a great experience. But that's really, I mean, we were doing probably 3 novels a year. And any kind of writing you do is furthering your education and allowing you to become more familiar with the craft. So it was absolutely a very critical part of our evolution as writers and tremendous, invaluable. And then we started writing screenplays together too, because we'd always been, big movie buffs as well. And when we wrote, it was always very visual for us. We would see the scene in our mind, set the scene in our mind. And so, as we wrote, it was like writing a movie. And I still write that way. And so we did that for a while. And then we both got burned out on romance, as one does. And so we decided to go to murder, right? I remember at one book signing, PJ was we were asked, and somebody said, what made you go from romance novels to murder? And PJ, totally deadpan, just looks at them and says, menopause. So we did. We were burned out, and we decided that we'd take a year off, take this big risk, and write something that we love to read, which was crime thrillers. Everybody, we love to solve a puzzle, solve a mystery. And, doing the Harlequins, you really had the man and the woman and the conflict and the resolution. And they were really discouraging secondary characters, let alone tertiary characters or any kind of advanced plotting. And so we did that, and that's where we came up with Monkey Wrench. And by the number of characters in the Monkey Wrench series, I think it's pretty obvious that we were like, oh, we have no restrictions. We're going to write about 200 different people and characters, because we always really loved to write about characters. It was our favorite part. And that's kind of history. You wrote Monkey Wrench and got an agent, and then the auction, and that brings us back to 9/11. So, that was kind of the genesis of our career and our evolution. And PJ and I wrote the first 8 novels of Monkey Wrench together before she passed, sadly, in 2016. She had heart failure. So it was, obviously, as you can imagine, devastating. She was my mom and, my partner, but she was truly also my soulmate. And when she passed, I sat and I thought, and I wondered, it's like, do I even want to continue the Monkey Wrench series? Can I even continue it alone? And that was on the back burner. And then 2 weeks later, I sat down at the computer, and it was almost like PJ's spirit just like flew into my body. I opened up a new file, and I started writing, and I never stopped. And world record, I wrote the first draft of The Guilty Dead in 5 months. That never happens, and it will never happen again. Generally it takes a year, and I'd rather have 2 years, but I do a book a year. And it was really incredible. And, the writing, PJ's always with me, but the writing is such an enduring tether. And she is really, with me when I'm writing. It's like we're still a team. I can still hear laughter, and I can be writing something and hear PJ go, well, that's not gonna work. What are you doing? So, it's something that it was great. And I wrote Ice Cold Heart after that, and that went quickly too. And I was glad that I was able to kind of was almost like a pan to PJ that yes, I'm going to continue this series we created together. And it was also probably comforting to be with these familiar characters because they were family to us. I mean, we kept expecting to get Christmas cards from Grace, Annie, Harley, and the gang, every year. They were, we were that close. So, that was a consolation. And then after that, I just had this powerful urge to kind of open up a new avenue in writing. And I had lived in Los Angeles for 10 years. And, when you live in a place that long, you become part of it. It was my adoptive hometown. And I had so many experiences and, so many observations. It was like this, vast, capacious vault of everything that I can write about. And LA is a very fun place to write about it because it's so crazy. And that's how I kind of conceived of Deep Into the Dark and started working on Sam Easton, the character, who is Afghan war veteran suffering from severe PTSD, and Detective Margaret Nolan, who is the female LAPD detective in the old boys club in the very elite homicide specialist section. So she's kind of finding her way, Sam's finding her way, and they're not like at all, but they're kind of mirror images, inverse images of each other because they have dark pasts and they're both dealing with some things, and they meet up because Sam becomes person interest in a multiple murder case that she's running. So that was the start of Deep Into the Dark. And I just have to show you all, I just got hot off the press paperbacks of Deep Into the Dark, and they will be out September 28th. And it's also really cool because there are 3 kind of bonus features to the paperback, and it has an intro, a foreword by the author, and there are also discussion questions at the end, and also a excerpt of Desolation Canyon, which is the second book in this new series. And I'll show you this is the arc of Desolation Canyon, and I had to show you because I think this is like the greatest book cover we've had. I love it. So this Desolation Canyon will be coming out in January of 2022, so pretty soon. So I'm very excited about that. And there are lots of fun things kind of in the film aspects. I just wrote the pilot for the Monkey Ranch as a TV or streaming series, and now I've been asked to do the script for the actual feature film. So I'm working with producers in the UK and Los Angeles, and so that will be out for a pitch soon. So fingers crossed on that, very much so. And Deep to the Dark is all with Los Angeles agent out there because there's been interest for film in that as well, and TV. So I know when it comes to Hollywood, I never hold my breath, but I still do allow myself to get really excited about it, because if nothing happens, you have missed that opportunity to feel the joy and be excited. And who doesn't want to be excited about something and think about something really cool in the future happening. And actually the third thing that's happening is that PJ and I wrote a script called Return of the Magi, and it's a dark, funny, poignant Christmas story with ultimately redemption at the end for the characters. And when she began to get ill, it had always been our dream to have Magi. It was our favorite pet project. And I realized that, she probably wasn't going to last long enough to see Magi as a film. And so I decided that I would do the novelization of our beloved story. So I'd go to work at her house and work all day on a monkey wrench. And then I would come home and work all night on the novelization. And it was crazy. I got up the morning she passed, and I got an email from my UK editor telling me that they were going to publish Return of the Magi as an ebook. So I went over there and I was able to tell PJ that before she passed, and it was just one of those things that seems like it was preordained or meant to be. So that was, an amazing, incredible experience and memory that I have. But anyhow, the Return of the Magi is actually now in pre-production as an animated feature film, which is like so great, because if you read Return of the Magi, I realize you can see it as a animation. And the production company sent some animatics that they're thinking of the trailer, so we get to see the characters and what they're thinking and how they are translated, and it's a fascinating process. So I'm certainly hoping that that'll be on the screen sometime up and coming in a few years. So a lot is going on, but a lot of amazing things that I just really feel fortunate and so blessed. And does anybody have any questions? I love to do Q&A.
I have a question. You talk about you write series, and I was just wondering, is there something that's more appealing about writing a series versus writing, say, a standalone novel that just is like one and done?
That is a really great question, and I will share a little secret with you. We wrote Monkey Wrench as a standalone. And when it was finally purchased and the editor and we're doing the contracts, like, this is a great series. This is going to be a series. So basically they took standalone and said, no, it's going to be a series. And as an author, are you going to say no? No, you're not going to say no to doing a series. So we did. And then, now there are 10 Monkey Wrench books. Also, Deep into the Dark, written as a standalone. I wrote it as a standalone. And again, the editor of my new publishing said, no, this is going to be a series. So again, it's an offer you absolutely cannot refuse. So I have these two, and right now I'm working on the third installment. And, if depending on the success of the series, that will, all continue, or maybe it'll only be a trilogy, and then I'll see what's next, and I'll write another standalone that will become a series. But it's just so much fun. I mean, the creative process is great, and it's so incredibly humbling and flattering to hear that the people enjoy the characters so much, the editors, that they want to see them again and again. And, there's a lot of comfort in going back to your old friends and writing about them, and you get to know them. I'm just starting to really get to know these characters in this new LA set series. And it's just fun. It's like going to a party and meeting some cool new people that you kind of want to hang out with and, have a happy hour with. So. But yeah, that's actually a really great question, because I feel like I've never even been asked that before. But yeah, I think that people don't often realize that, by and large, when authors don't necessarily set out to write a series, but if they're successful, they want to continue that, and it's in the best interest of everyone, so.
Well, as a reader too, sometimes sometimes because I have ADD, the idea of like, oh my God, 20 books, I just no. And then other times you start reading and then you just want to keep hanging out with the characters, and then you get to the point where you catch up, and now you have to wait for the author to write another one. It's like, come on.
I know, and it's so hard. Now, I know, as a reader of series, I feel the same way. But it's always, when's the next book? Hurry up and write. It's like I'm writing as fast as I can, because writing a novel is a long process. I mean, it's super quick to finish a book in a year. It really is. I mean, you've got like 90,000 words, and that's not easy. I mean, I've been doing this for, decades. So I finally have I know how, but it was very difficult. The pressure of deadlines when PJ and I started. I mean, we thought, oh, great, you write a book and it makes the New York Times bestseller list, and then you can write the next one whenever you want. Oh, not so. And it was really, really hard. Oh my gosh. I am sorry. My house alarm is now going off because of a low battery.
Oh.
Pardon me again. Oh, the cat and the alarm. I'll be right back.
It sounds like a plot.
Yeah.
We're all her alibis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, except for right now, we don't know what she's doing.
Yeah. So I want to ask her a question about
Here I am.
physically, how did you do the writing, the two of you? Did you both sit down at the computer? Did one of you sit down at the computer and the other was walking around saying, no, not that? Or,
Well, we've done that. We've definitely done that. How it started is, in the early years, pre-Monkey Wrench, I would go to her house, and we had this desk, which I'm sitting at now. And so we sat across from each other with our own computers and, to interact, we'd write, mainly we did the writing alone, that kind of writing, it's very thoughtful and you have to focus and it's very internalized. So we would, hash out plots and, and yes, we get up and start pacing and acting things out. And, occasionally we would do a line for line thing, especially in dialogue, very helpful in dialogue to have two people, and Gino and Migosi, the Monkey Wrench characters were, we had lots of fun with that. But when I moved to LA, I flew back almost every month, back, to Minneapolis so we could work. So it was a lot of travel. But during that time, we just did a lot of, we would spend hours on the phone. PJ had at the time, a Watts line where there was unlimited long distance. And so we'd sit there literally with the phone for like 7 hours, and we would talk and we'd write and then email certain things, back and forth and whatnot. And then when I moved back here, I lived only 8 miles away from PJ. So we resumed that kind of one-on-one and being together. But there's a funny story. Well, there are a lot of funny stories about PJ, but one of the things that's very memorable is we were working on Monkey Wrench, and we were at the very end of Monkey Wrench. And I had my assignment, which was kind of the final chapter, and PJ had her assignment, which is kind of the climax. And I happened to be at a convention in Las Vegas. So, and our flight was leaving, but we had to check out the hotel. So I'm sitting in a lobby in the hotel in Las Vegas, and I'm kind of, writing out the last chapter, finished it in a lobby in a hotel in Vegas. And then told PJ, I'll email when I get back to LA. She's like, I finished mine too. I'll email to you right now and you can read it when you get back. So get on a plane, fly home. And I opened up the file to see, what she had written in that last chapter. And she had changed the killer. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what did you do? And it was fabulous. I mean, it ended up being this, great, an even better plot twist. But it was so funny. And that, we surprise each other quite a bit in that way. I mean, we would just, you'd go home at night. And when you're writing a chapter, see, we never outlined. And when you're writing a chapter and you think you know what's going to happen, but then that action or behavior seems so disingenuous and not authentic to the character, you have to, switch in midstream. And so we often did that. So we had a lot of surprises for each other, which was also part of the fun. It's like kind of waking up and saying, it's like, gosh, I wonder what Santa's going to bring. What's in my stocking this morning? So, but yeah, it was super, it was it's always a fun thing. The spontaneity I do, I miss that. I mean, obviously I miss writing with my partner, but a lot of times the spontaneity of somebody just saying something totally out of the blue that seems unconnected or is not going to have any kind of impact, but it actually does. So, I mean, that's why I think, right, I and probably most other writers are really super hyper vigilant about everything that's going around us, and we watch, because that's where you see something that seems absolutely totally normal or boring and people wouldn't even give it a second thought, but the littlest thing can totally spark like an entire plot. And that's why I am that one person you will see in public at an airport or in a waiting room. I'm that one weirdo that does not have my face buried in my phone or my tablets, because I just sit there and watch people. And that's, I think it's just like I'm watching them, their behavior, and at the same time, I'm making up stories about them too. And I'm sure some people is like, what, why is she staring at me? Making people uncomfortable. But that I think is just, really important. You have to absorb everything around, because, it sounds cliche, but inspiration, really, really does come from everywhere. When you have no idea what's gonna, hit you.
Cool. You talked about writing the script for a pilot. Is it hard to transition? Because I know, like, with scripts, there's the, little bit of setup for the scene, and then everything is dialogue, really.
It is, and that is a good question too. Because PJ and I have a background in screenwriting, it was easy to jump. Well, it wasn't easy to jump back after doing, 10 years of novels, 10, 14 years of novels. We hadn't done a screenplay since then. So you have to change your mindset entirely. And there is this great quote, and I can't remember who said it. It may have been Noel Coward, but anyhow, he was discussing adapting a book for film, and he said, adapting a book for film is like taking a big juicy steak and condensing it down into a bouillon cube. And I thought that was just absolutely, I mean, it's so dead on. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And a screenplay is, it's 120 pages. It's a page a minute. So you've got a 440 page novel, and, shrinking it down like that. But, it really takes discipline, and it's good activity. It's educational to realize, you're finding the main plot points. You're writing for the biggest bang, the most excitement. In the screenwriting biz, they always say it's like, make sure that at the bottom of every page, you give the reader a reason to turn it. And that's how PJ and I approached writing novels, because, it's good. You want it to be exciting. You want people to not be able to stop. They can't wait. They want to turn the next page. And part of it also is that because PJ and I were two people, having exchanged all the time writing, our books are very, very dialogue heavy. And so often I found in an adaptation that I could just do the brief descriptive narration, which is about a paragraph or whatever, and jump right into dialogue. And it's already written, it's already done. So it's almost a little more like changing format. But yeah, it's fun. And I had a great co-writer with me, and hopefully I will on the feature film too, because somebody that's very conversant in scripts, and somebody who's written millions of them, just kind of for help, because you want it to be the best it can be. You want to do the material justice, and it's been a long time, and I'm not arrogant thinking that, I could do anything. I really, it's great to have that support. So kind of fun.
Yeah, it seems like when you write a novel, you put it out there, and the readers sort of interpret how they want, so you can't really control that. but in a sense, the novel is what you wrote, where it seems like a screenplay, there's so many other people involved in that once you let it go that it might not, you have like no real control over how it turns out, let alone how the audience perceives it.
You're absolutely right about that. 100% right about it. And so many things have been destroyed. And I actually had a long conference call with a producer in the UK yesterday, and we're very much on, have, same parallel thinking on this, is that if you give up something to a major studio, forget it. You will have no say, no control, no nothing. You'll have a big fat paycheck, that's for sure. But that's it. And we were discussing about going the indie route, because I think some of the greatest talents as far as directors and are in the indie world, because in the indie world, it's actually collaborative. They're, first of all, they're not Harvard Business School suits running a studio based on the bottom line, which all the big studios essentially are. You've got from top to bottom, you've got people who are artists who have been in the film business their entire lives. It's a hard industry. They're there because they love it and they've been passionate about it. And those we decided are definitely the kind of people we want to work with. I mean, look, if I'm not going to say that I know what's going to be the best on the screen. That's not my thing. And I will gladly turn it over to somebody, that has that vision. I don't have that vision, but you want somebody who's not going to turn it into a cookie cutter, And so, yeah, but it's always a crapshoot. You don't know. And really, it's like, I think you have better luck of winning $1 million at a slot machine at the Bellagio than you ever do getting a film made. But you know what? You just keep forging ahead. You keep trying different routes, and tickets. Lottery tickets. People actually win the lottery, so I kind of liken it to that.
Yeah. Well, it seems now it's probably the best time to be doing stuff like that. What with Netflix and Amazon,
Yes.
all those Hulu and Max, and everybody trying to have their own original content.
Yes.
It's given writers and filmmakers a lot more options.
Yes, exactly. It's really funny though, interestingly. Yeah, because there's just a need for content. So many studios. But interestingly enough, just in the past few months, now all the big streamers are basically becoming their own mini studios. And they're not going through outside producers. So it's very incestuous now, where all the streamers have the people they work with, they have the writers they work with, and suddenly they're not really buying original content. And they're also producing the stuff that they've purchased before the pandemic and the stuff that was in pre-production. And they're also, I've always said that Hollywood is filled with cowards. They want any reason to say no because there's so much money involved. So that's why you see 27 Spider-Mans or 40 Batmans. They take something that worked once and they keep doing it over and over and over again, because it's a big biz, and part of big biz is minimizing risk. So
yeah, but it gets very boring.
Oh, it's horrible. That's why, they're making less movies now. Big studios, far less movies. And there's, I can't believe how much junk gets. It's like, what? When I was talking to the producer, we were like, just baffled that there's some really brilliant things out there, but I kind of feel like they're deep tracks on an album. Like they're just not out there, and then you've got this, the same old thing, and it's boring. And just, Hollywood is really, over the past, I would say 40 years, kind of lost a lot of its luster. I remember back, there are no movie stars anymore, for one thing. There was such a glamorous element, like back even, 40 years ago, it was like Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Angelina Jolie, all these, and there were still stars like Marilyn Monroe was a star, and, Greta Garbo. And now it's like, there's so many outlets and so many things going on. and so many projects that I don't know any actors' names now. Like I can't, the movie stars are actually the old ones, my age, I was like the last generation that, had that big thing. That's kind of sad.
Yeah. And yeah, that used to be a lot more, like I cared more. Like I find too, there's just so many of them and they all look the same. They're
Yep.
just going for a type, like the same, like skinny, young. And
Yeah.
a little bit, sometimes things come through and you're like, oh my God, they're still working. These people still exist. Yay.
Yeah.
And it's
No,
not the same old high school stuff.
Yeah, it's totally true. And then it's like when you see something that's really great or really original, it's so much more reward. It's so exciting now. Before you could rely on a few good movies and TV shows a week, and part of the thing is that there's so much out there. There's so many series, so many platforms. And it's like, how do you even choose? And you can't see everything. And I think too much information, I kind of feel like, the digital world, and, I've written about it for years. It's just like sensory overload. And that's why I'm like so happy to be in my little house in the country, and just being alone and sitting there and writing, because it feels like I'm kind of a throwback to a simpler and more innocent time. My life's very basic. And, of course, I use technology and I'm grateful for technology, but I'm not that person on the phone or on Instagram or Facebook all the time, because I find it very distracting. It's not that I don't love and appreciate my fans. It's not that I don't want to communicate with them, because that's my job. I want to be there for them, but I just can't do it all the time. I don't know, some people are on Twitter like 24/7. And it's like, how do you work? Because I can't turn a switch. Maybe some people can, but I cannot go from like doing that kind of stuff and then, oh yeah, okay, I'm ready to write this great new chapter. I have to get in the zone, and getting in the zone takes sometimes a really long time, or sometimes 2 glasses of wine.
Gillette can relate to that.
Yes. No, I'm trying to look and see. I feel like, is Gillette?
Yes.
Were you going to ask a question? I feel like I couldn't hear anything from you.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I generally put all my questions through chat, and I actually just feed them to Shelley.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Okay, good.
Mostly I just quietly smile and nod my appreciation for being able to spend time almost with you.
Oh, yes. Well,
it's like almost.
It is almost. Well, it's as close as you can get. And when you think, it's like, it's in a way it's a more intimate experience,
If I could just pour myself a glass of wine, we would all just be.
Me too. And I'm like, well, it's 11:15, a little too early. You can have wine with lunch.
There we go.
Yeah.
What made you move back to this area?
Well, I grew up in this area.
Right.
And my family was here, and all my friends were here. And I moved out to LA for love. I met a film festival. I met a screenwriter, and we had a long distance relationship for a little bit. And then I was like, I want to move to LA. I was much younger then, and it was like something, it's like, I want to do everything. I'm the kind of person that will do absolutely everything and try everything, just because, as a younger person, I had this great fear of having regrets that I didn't take a risk or do something. So therefore, if I feel like I've done everything now, and I have no regrets. I sang in a rock band for 8 years. That was something I had to do. But we were together 10 years. A great guy. We're still good friends. But after 10 years, I think if it's going to be a long-term thing or if it's just not. So we had an amicable parting, and I was getting homesick too. just missing, the values and things out there are very different. And like for Dale, my boyfriend, he didn't have a close family. In fact, he hated his family. And friends for him were not like, for me, I don't have friends, I have family. And his friends were always based on, if they were the right guest to have at the dinner party. He grew up in LA in a showbiz fam. He was a famous screenwriter. So he was, that was his crowd. And it was like, well, no, we can't invite this person because they won't go with this person or they're not prestigious enough. And it started to get a really bad taste in my mouth because not everyone in LA is like that, but a lot of people are. I mean, it's a very superficial industry, and I'm not criticizing it for that. It is because it's all about how you look. It's all about appearance and it's all about impression. And that's just the kind of business it is. It always has been, and it will never change. But I got fatigued because I made some really good friends in LA, and we're still good friends, and I've been back for like 13 years. But it was not my thing anymore. It was a blast while it lasted. I mean, it was fabulous. It was glamorous. It was beyond my wildest dreams. And also I'm so glad I did it, because if I hadn't, I would have regretted that. So there you go. I have no regrets. My bucket list is full. I have no idea what to do, which is probably why I'm writing a book here and been so prolific lately.
Wow. Maybe you could read a little bit, because
I was telling Elena I'm a horrible reader, but I suppose I could just read. Actually, I will read something. What, if you don't mind, I'm going to read a little bit from my introduction into Deep in the Dark, because it talks a lot about writing.
Cool.
And that might be more interesting than me reading a passage. So, okay, now I have to get the lights. All right. Book ideas come from everywhere, in a constant barrage, so I can never accurately pinpoint their origins or the moment a story with legs begins to take shape. They usually begin as elusive fetal tickles in the back of my mind that gestate over the course of weeks, months, and sometimes years before eventually finding life on the page. Deep into the Dark was a unique experience. It came to me fast and nearly fully formed, and my only frustration was that my fingers couldn't keep up with my brain. Don't misunderstand me. I didn't plot the book ahead of time. I find it futile to even attempt an outline because my frequently unpredictable characters refuse to be constrained by a preordained fate. It's like subjecting a child to a prearranged marriage. But it was a whole concept from the inception. After writing 10 novels set in my hometown of Minneapolis, I felt a powerful yearning to change locales and explore my vibrant, clamoring, and often crazy adoptive home of Los Angeles. I wanted a female detective as intense as the city and unintimidated by the tight fraternity of LAPD's homicide special section. Somebody intelligent and tough, but also compassionate and introspective. So was born Margaret Nolan, child of a multi-generational military family. She is stinging over the recent death of her brother Max in Afghanistan and frustrated by her family's poorly concealed disapproval of her civilian career. Her counterpart is Sam Easton, also a combat veteran. He is disfigured from an explosion that almost took his life, but the emotional toll is even more devastating. Plagued by blackouts, hallucinations, and a disintegrating personal life, he's not remotely confident he can win this newest battle against PTSD in spite of what his psychiatrist says. Even so, he remains arch, self-facing, and objective about his struggles. He is a victim, but he doesn't have a victim mentality. That perspective helped define his character. And there's much more, but I will close it with that and talk, I was talking about how the book wasn't plotted. And I will share with you a question that I got the other night. I was moderating another author for an event, and I received a lot of the viewers sending questions ahead of time, so I could vet them and be prepared to ask her when she was finished doing her speech. And one of the questions was, are you a plotter or a pantser? Okay, I've been a writer for like 35 years. I'm like, what's a pantser? So I had to go on Google to look it up. I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar. It's a writer who flies by the seat of their pants as opposed to outlining and plotting. And I realized, like, I'm a pantser. I'm a pantser. Maybe I'm a plantster a little bit, because I always have to, I need a concept. And I have places where I want to go that are not mapped out, but I have points in my head. It's like a constellation. I've got this concept, and those are the stars, and that's going to come in. But that's extent of my plotting. I can't outline, as I mentioned in my foreword, and PJ couldn't either. And that's how we wrote together. And when you look back about our early years of writing together in my bedroom at Story Hour, it kind of makes sense that we did outline those stories, and we just kind of went with it. So
You pick the dead bodies.
well, it's actually one of the most difficult parts, is finding out who the victim is, how they died, and why they died. And it's a really, I often will start out with a dead body. PJ and I did too. Start out, it's like, okay, we have this dead body that's in this environment, and we're not sure who killed him. We're not sure exactly why. And then kind of build the story around that. It's some of the pre-work that you do. But it's so hard, and I can't tell you how many people I've killed. I mean, I should go back and count. It's got to be almost at least 50, maybe more. We killed a lot of people in Monkey Wrench. And I just always remember that from the beginning, being a struggle. It's just how. And the other thing that's always a struggle is coming up with names, because after a while, you've used a lot of first names, you've used a lot of last names, and we've gone through phone books back when we had them. I mean, I'll sit there and pay attention, again, like you look at the billboard, you read the cereal box, you watch TV, you look for names that you can use. So it's funny.
I heard about a trick for coming up with names when I went to a bookseller conference. They were talking about.
Share with me.
And it's where you take when you're driving down the highway and you see all those exit signs for different towns or streets, and you like take the street name and then the town name, or the two street names in a row or something, and you put them together, and there's your name.
Oh God, that's great. I'm going to try it sometime. I have a thing later today, so when I'm driving, I'll see how that works out. Because, being only 100 pages into the next novel, I still need a lot of names. But that's a cool thing about writing, like in a certain locale, is that at least the street names are already named. You don't have to make it up.
That's the hard part about science fiction, because there you have to like create everything from scratch.
I know.
The towns.
And the culture, the society. Same with fantasy. Same with fantasy. I don't know how they do it. I mean, I thought about, God, would I like to world build? And I'm like, not in that way. Yeah.
And you can really tell the difference too when like the depth of the novels, like when there's secondary characters that are fully fleshed out.
Yes.
And you can recognize like when it's placed someplace, and you can read the street names, and know that the authors had this kind of, so they're very well grounded.
Yeah.
And you can tell even in fantasy novels when they didn't do the world building.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah. Well, part of it, I mean, it's also another cliche, but absolutely the best advice anyone can give a young writer. You write what you know. You don't write about stuff that you don't, because it shows through. And I think that really is a huge pitfall in those genres, because, unless you're just absolutely focused and maybe partially insane, that that you can go to the world you created and see it and interact with it in your mind. And you can tell the authors who do that, I think.
Yes.
Right.
Are you
So
sleeping, honey?
me?
Yeah.
No, my eyes hurt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I work with animals a lot. So
Where?
I'm a dog
Doctor?
trainer and I work in an animal rescue, and I was there till after 10 last night because we have some sick kitties.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bless your heart. That's my biggest charity is animal welfare. So I appreciate all you do. I know it's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest part is when you lose the babies, because 1 minute they're perfectly healthy and you're playing with them, they're so cute. The next day you come in and they're like, and they were gone, just poof.
Oh, it's so sad. It's heartbreaking. It's like, I mean, losing people, losing animals. If you're an animal lover, it's the same thing, really. They're family. I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry.
No, yeah. Well, we have a couple that we're hoping they're fighting. So they're fighting the
Good.
Hope they
I'll
win.
keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah, and dogs. So it's just my eyes hurt sometimes from all the fur, and then I have
Exactly. Yep, I
fur
feel
everywhere. Like fur, animal scratches, bites. I'm just
I remember my days of having kittens, and like I had scratches all up and down my arms and legs, and I loved it. I didn't care. They're so amazing.
They are.
We love them. Well, it's 12:29. Is there a final question before you wrap up? I've had a really great time with everyone today, by the way. Thank you for having me.
No, it's been great. Have you done any film festivals yet as a screenwriter or author? Or?
Yeah, well, actually, Return of the Magi, the Christmas script, was a finalist in the Austin Film Festival many years ago. So PJ and I, we didn't win, but it was the top four, in the top four, which is really quite an honor. And so we flew down to Austin and went to the film festival, and it was great. That's, by the way, where I met Dale, my LA boyfriend. And I've been, just because I was in the industry for so long, I've been to tons of film festivals and stuff, but I don't know. I think that whole screenplay thing, I'm just gonna take a back seat and whatever, and if it wins an Oscar, I won't be there.
Aw. Seems though that would be the fun part. It's
not. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
My boyfriend was a member of the Academy, so he got 2 tickets every year to go to the Oscars. We never went, because the thing is, you get way up in the nosebleed seats, and it's hours long.
Yeah.
And it's hours long. And it's hours long, as he always said, is watching a bunch of really narcissistic actors patting themselves on the back.
Yeah.
But it's fun to watch. It would have been fun to dress for it, but I guess that I'm past that point in my life. Like, I don't care. Just saying I don't need it.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, we're so delighted to have you, and hope you'll come back again.
Oh, yes.
And we hope when everything is open and free and available, we're going to have a big party in Wadena. So we'll hope you come to that.
Good. I'm going to have a big party too. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
No, it was really great. Thanks for showing up on Saturday morning. And thanks again, Lina, for being in touch. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Have a great day, everybody.